everyone. Good to see you again. Filecoin Core Dev 75. We have NV24 coming up and updates. We have F3 team updates as well, and some discussions around NV25 upgrade planning, especially in light of changes to F3. And then we'll close. So that's all we have for today. I'll move it to Oren now.
Yeah, so since the last call, the calibration network has upgraded to NV24 successfully. That upgrade happened probably, I think it's 4 weeks from now, or like, so the activation of upgrade to NV24 was successful. Then about a week later, we had a activation of F3 on calibration network. So initially, the bootstrapping and activation of F3 was successful. But after F3 had been running for a little bit, we found one issue on the client side, in the client/SP code regarding the block production code that could affect F3. And we also found a issue in the F3 protocol. So in light of these findings, the implementation teams gathered and tried to figure out, basically we found the last issue there a day before we had to ship the final release that was going out to mainnet. And in light of these findings, we found it most prudent to delay the activation of F3 to ensure that we have better testing coverage of F3 and make sure that everything is safe to ship to mainnet, basically. That doesn't mean that, so that means that the NV24 upgrade with the 3 FIPS will still pass, but we will not like activate F3 in NV24 as we hope to do. So we've been posting some messages in the core devs discussions on GitHub, in the community channels, and so on. And I think we will discuss a little bit later on, but ideally schedule the F3 activation early January in NV25. So yeah, that's updates on my side.
Thank you. Are there comments or questions regarding the change? Nothing. Okay.
Is there a specific date, Orion, that we're targeting for NV25 in January right now?
I think we have that on a agenda item after the F3 update that Masa will give. So we'll get back to that in 5 minutes time, I guess.
Yes.
No worries.
Great. Okay. Is Marcy on the call? I believe I saw.
Yes, I'm here, Lucky.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, folks. So a quick update on the F3 engineering, just to add to what Orion pointed out. F3 is now live and progressing on CalibNet. We have made a number of bug fixes, and they've been applied. There was a need for specific intervention to get the network going again. And with the help of folks, we got that running. So F3 is now live and making progress. We pushed the deadline, as Orion pointed out, just to basically have a long-running test, have some confidence building that the network, basically the protocol progresses without any issues for extended period of time. In terms of going a little bit deeper, the bugs that were found were in the participation API. Basically, these are edge cases that pop up in a network that is of small size with very uneven power distribution. But nevertheless, there are bugs. And then the second one was a bug in the power table diffs that are calculated by F3. All changes have been bubbled up both in Lotus Node, Lotus Miner, and Curio. We've also spent a bit of time implementing enhanced monitoring and basically tooling in order to query the state of F3 more easily, provide more information, debugging information, being able to manipulate F3 metadata state on the nodes. And those all have been merged into Lotus and are available for use. What's next for F3 engineering team? We want to continue testing on CalibNet, specifically measuring how the network is behaving. Right now, the network is in the catch-up mode, so there would be an increased bandwidth usage, and after that, the bandwidth usage should go down. So we are actively monitoring the network, and we want to see how it basically shapes up against the expectations, as well as basically testing the edge cases that we have hit in CalibNet for any other issues that we might have missed. So that's one part of the work. The second part of the work is that we have made a whole bunch of measurements, and we want to make that into a public dashboard so that the community can see. And yeah, hopefully that would provide more visibility into F3 performance and so on.
Do you know when this dashboard would be made public, or is that already out there?
Yeah, so the dashboard has existed for maybe 6 months now. Basically, the reason it hasn't been made public is because we run a passive test. We were through a passive testing phase. And in passive testing phase, there is no metrics until the network comes up. And then there's a measurement that's happening. And then the measurements go down. And then we go back and reiterate on the code. And then we keep repeating, right? So if you zoom out, what you see from the data is sort of very patchy data. But now we're at the stage where we don't do passive testing anymore. So for example, CalibNet is no longer the passive testing. It keeps running and making progress. And then the dashboard is populated. And that's now is a good time to make that public. That's why we want to make it public. In terms of timing, we estimate that should be online maybe by the end of November, if not earlier.
Okay. I mean, based on what you know now, do you think early January for the release of F3 would be a good enough time? Do you foresee any delays for the delays?
Yeah, that's a good question. Like the short answer is that I don't have enough evidence to have a argument for or against it. We've just got the CalibNet going today, and we're, like I said, monitoring it very closely, and we'll be producing reports in terms of what happened, what did we do about it, and basically post-mortem, there would be a report about that. And ask me again when we have more data. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thanks. Are there additional thoughts or questions on F3? Okay, maybe not right now. Right, so the next thing, based on our pre-scheduled timeline, mainnet for NV25, we had scheduled that to happen April 16, 2025, and CalibNet Wednesday 19, 2025. We can ignore the code freeze day because there are lots of variables that will go into exactly fixing that. So this is what we are working towards right now. So if we're hoping to make F3 go with NV25 from the implementer point of view, that will mean bringing it earlier in the year. So I wanted to get initial feedback, if there is any, in terms of proposed what timeline will probably work, and if it's going to be that early in the year, do we have the resources, especially if it's going to be in January, for example, do we have the resources and availability to ship that? And then finally, would it just be F3? Would there be other improvements or enhancements or FIPS that will go with that? So these are just questions that I have, but the timeline is what we have right now. So I wonder if there are like initial thoughts or input to this.
Yeah. So I think, as Marcy said, it would be great to. I think we need to gather the evidence that F3 is running and the data after we unblocked it today. But ideally, I think we've been looking at a shorter turnaround time for NV25 with just a F3 activation date. I think we need to get a confirmation from the Force team that they have the resources to implement a network skeleton. But apart from that, there isn't much else that is needed to be done for setting a activation of F3. Of course, that changes if we are trying to move more FIPS into a network upgrade, because that would require testing and confirmation that these FIPS and implementations work. Yeah, and there will be more implementation work for them with more FIPS in a network upgrade, basically.
Okay. So I guess in terms of timeline, it feels like we need to wait until we get the actual evidence from the F3 team and then confirmation from Forest team before we like pin anything down. So maybe publicly we don't give any date revised timeline yet until we have that confirmation.
Yeah, I think Masi, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe by Wednesday next week we can give a better confirmation that the data that we gotten in our dashboard supports targeting a early January upgrade, like around, I think when we calculated it, our team, we ended up like in January 14th
Okay.
for the upgrade.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable. Overall, basically what I look for is extended period of time where we have not changed the protocol and we've measured its impact on the network. The one thing to point out about the data that's been collected now is that the protocol is on the catch-up because it was blocked for a period of time, so all the nodes are catching up. So that data is not really representative of F3 in its local normal state, if you like. So yeah, and let's revisit next Wednesday. I think by next Wednesday we should be in a much better place in terms of at least visibility into the data.
Great, thanks. Any other comment or feedback? One question for you, Oren, from my side. Whose decision would it be? Well, yeah, also for the entire house, to determine if we're including other FIPS, or I guess it would be like an implementer prioritization thing, or like they would say we are able to do this or that, or we will just put all our resources for F3 and ship that, and then other FIPS can come in later.
I would say if we're going for a mid-January, early January upgrade, there isn't any additional time from what I've heard from other implementers to, like, we have to consider the other blockers there. There is Christmas holidays for a lot of people, for a lot of teams. There's New Year's, and at the end of January, early February, there's also Chinese New Year's. So there's a lot of constraints that we're working around, and I don't think that with that timeline, there's no availability for shipping other FIPS, given that none of the implementation work has been completed.
Okay, thanks. Okay, any other comments or question? I believe that's the end of all we had today. On the housekeeping side, it's an interesting period. Also, I'll be putting together like a short discussion post within the core devs channel, exactly thinking through about the current composition of core devs and exactly defining what that is, and how we can improve engagement. So please, if you see that conversation open, I ask that you engage and share all your thoughts. I'm imagining that, you know, there would have been discussions in Bangkok regarding this. So I'm really interested in hearing feedback, how we can better structure this core devs group to make it more effective and efficient and to increase participation as well. So when you see that, please do engage. Otherwise, thank you all so much for joining. Safe travels to everyone going back, and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye, guys.
Thanks, folks. Thanks, Lucky.